Row 4, Carl Thompson, Ryan Bull and Mark Best. Row 5, Matt Wren, Jason Page, Justin Rose. Row 6 and 7 is Jack Driscoll, Lee Ellis and Alan Morgan. With Mark Russell, Morgan Creasy is out there. Looks like it could be the K8. Green flag at the back then, so puts it in. All eyes on the light. Out go the light for the 16-lap race. Is now underway. Scott Halliday trying to go the long way around and does hold on to second position. Craig Hemley looking to make pass on Don Gilbert, but to no avail, so it will be Lee Healy who takes up the running of the season tuning MRO Powerbikes as they make their way round through for the first time of those 16 laps. I can see that Clinton Wood is there in around about 7th position as they drop down in towards Graham Hill Bend. Luke Blackford at the inside of Tommy Jones. That'll be a change of the race leading the Tommy Jones with Halliday on the edge of the Graham Hill Bend. And the field rounded out. I think it's the first time I'll be saying this by the two-time Thunderbike Ultra champion of Morgan Creasy. Of course, he will be out there on what is very quickly approaching a 20-year-old bike. He's looking to put himself not at the back of the field around the outside as the race will be coming across the line at the end of the Craig's had a good weekend so far. 2 fourth positions over the course of the 2 races that these guys have had. This will be the final race for the MRO Powerbikes this weekend. Of course, they have the 3 shorter races yesterday and the 1 longer one today. The second of the short races carried over to this morning. So this will be the first of 3 season tuning MRO Powerbikes. So this race is the first season support of the class this season. Lee Healy looks like he's pulling out a bit of an advantage here over Scott Halliday. It was 0.4 across the line. It's now just over half a second between himself and the man who's been fighting for the race wins over the weekend so far. Scott Halliday on that brilliant orange position, 4th position, 141, a second and a win in the retro class this weekend. Clinton Wood taking the first win and backing up with a second earlier on today. So he is currently second in class. It's Clinton Wood, but there are a couple of riders between Ramon Hunt and Clinton Wood. They're down in towards Graham Hill Bend now, and looks like they've got around about 3 seconds advantage or so, and 2 riders in between Ramon Hunt and Clinton Wood, and that would be Eddie Wormold and Tommy Jones, the first of the Brooklyn riders. Race leaders, back round flat first, coming towards the end of lap number 3. Fastest lap of the race so far. 3-3-1, it's like a 48-3-1 now. As Don Gilbert takes the fastest lap of the race. Almost the biggest lap of the weekend. It's the MRO Powerbikes. Don Gilbert more of a second behind Scott Halliday. Scott Halliday a further 0.4 behind Lee Healy, but it is closing up at the front, especially between Healy and Halliday. Bit of a lonely ride developing here for the number 9 field. Craig Hemley in 4th position. Then it's Ramon Hunt, Tommy Jones ahead of Eddie Wormold and Clinton Wood. Luke Blackford and Carl Thompson up next ahead of Ryan Bull. And that is the top 11 all across the line, with Ryan Bull rounding out the podium riders at the moment in the Brooklyn. In the retro, it's Matt Wren who's rounding out the top 3 at the moment. He's 12th position overall. And he has got very close company there from Mark Beck and Jack Driscoll. Delivery of Australia. Red leaders down in the Grand Hill again. And it is still Lee Healy who is leading the way. Don Gilbert just losing a little bit of time here, it seems, of the leading duo. Last time around it was a 0.9 of a second gap, but I think it's a case of not him going slower, but the 2 guys in front going quicker. It was a 48.4 on that previous lap for Don Gilbert, but a 48.2 for Lee Healy, and a 48 flat for Scott Halliday. 12 years in this class. It's Danny Tucker at 0.5, probably still 1.5 seconds away from that one, but of course Danny Tucker with them did that in the late 2000s, I think, 2008 or so, in the 400s. So that's the now, but Don Gilbert looking to regroup here. Lee Healy gave him for half a minute or so at Graham Hill Bend, and that will prove to be advantageous for Scott Halliday. Halliday through 30s and on towards clearway yet again. And it was John Gilbert who took this in the first split out of the top 3 riders. So keep your eye on the gap between Scott Halliday in second position and John Gilbert in third place. 7.79 this time around is 0.558. So good stuff there for John Gilbert. Completed 6 laps. We've got 10 more to go, but it is still Lee Healy who's his fastest lap of the race, and it's 48.3 on that previous lap. And the down into Graham Hill base yet again. Scott Halliday into that left-hander, turn 3 down there in Graham Hill base. John Gilbert just about keeping tabs on the 2 Hondas in front of him. Of course, I'm not quite sure what year of the bike it is for Lee Healy and Scott Halliday, but that GSX 1000, I think it was L7 for John Gilbert, which would be 8 or 9 years old now. So doing some good stuff on that GSX 1000. This nothing to power down around flat curve. And the top 3 are through yet again. Fastest lap of the race now for John Gilbert, 48.045. So the gap between the top 3 that is, sorry, is now half a second. Let's have a look at the battle in the retros, because Ramon Hunt has a 0.6 of a second advantage over Clinton Wood. And a second position between them, and of course whoever wins out of those 2 riders will come away from round number 1 with the championship in the MRO Retro 1000. So they're already through Graham Hill Bend, and his Ramon Hunt with a slim advantage over the number 850 of Clinton Wood. And in the club room, Tommy Jones has quite a few riders to finish on the Bruce Blackford second in the club room has a 1.2 second lead over the number 16 of Ryan Full on that orange and black on the fly race. They're round the clearway and heading towards the start finish line now, and that is where our club room race leader Tommy Jones is on the number 16 and around about a second advantage. In fact, there's 1.6 seconds between him and his nearest challenger for Ramon Hunt. They are 6th and 6th position on the circuit. The race leader is already through 30s, and it's Lee Healy. He took the race lead right from the start and hasn't let go of it yet. And Scott Purple is second number 1, so he's decided that now pretty well be the time to get the hammer down. We are at halfway distance now, 8 laps down and 8 to go. Maybe that's 7 to go because they're across the line already. Go out, and it's a 48.089 for Lee Healy. It's a 48.158 for Scott Halliday, 48.267 for John Gilbert, and we could well see a 47 potentially by the end of the race. Only the 200 in front of him in that first split, and he just loses a little bit of drive on the end of the lane to Hill Bend. Front wheel boring at the area to get the power down on that 52. Scott Halliday is not letting Lee Healy go. Personal best is split number 1 for Don Gilbert. Yellow is for Lee Healy and Scott Halliday, and that is to say that it's neither a personal best or fastest of the race. So it will go down yet again for Lee Healy. Scott Halliday has significantly inside. It's not close enough to make a challenge, but he could well keep that in the pocket for later on in the race. 6 laps to go, and Craig Kennelly, we mentioned it at the start of this race, is coming a relatively lonely 4th place, and he is 10 seconds away from John Gilbert, the man in front. The still has 5.2 seconds between himself and the man in front. That is your club race leader. This could well be the closest we've seen our top 3 for a few laps now. The tail enders will come into play here as well. Through the left, Lee Healy will get there first. He goes down the outside as he approaches the clearway. Scott Halliday will get the outside line as well, but Don Gilbert should be going to outside to go inside. It looks like it will be the outside here for Don Gilbert, and Lee Healy has worked in his favour still. One more tail ender. And Scott Halliday up the inside as well. Don Gilbert there, can he find a way through? Not at Paddock Hill Bend, but to try and get the drive through the dip, and he does clear to the inside on the approach to Druid. here we go, Tommy Jones from Luke Blackford and Ryan Bull. And the gap between Luke Blackford and Ryan Bull is 2.7 seconds. Ryan lies a little bit, however, because there's 5 laps to go through power with almost 10 seconds advantage over the 21 Mark Betts, who made the switch from the Yamaha R6 last season in the Rookie 600 Championship over now to the Yamaha R1 in the Rookie 1000. There goes Mark Betts in towards Paddock Hill Bend now, just in road 4th in the retro coming across the line, and Morgan Greasy now just taking the first time in his career, and again the leading two through Don Gilbert trying to find his way through. There he goes, and it has cost him a few tenths of a second because he has gone purple on that previous lap there. 48.045 for Scott Halliday now. So two will have to be the fastest lap of the race, both of the 48.045. Scott Halliday on the previous lap, Don Gilbert so there is 1,000 minutes in terms of the pace of the leading three. But Don Gilbert, he has 3 tenths of a second to make up. In fact, make that half a second because he has just lost 2 tenths within that first split. So again, around the right hander that brings you on to Clark Herman. Then it's up in the straight. Scott Halliday back on there, working with the power. He's just not quite close enough to make the challenge as he goes towards Paddock Hill Bend. But again, Lee Healy doing such a great job of defending that race lead, and Don Gilbert is taking the second here. Scott Halliday looks to the outside. He's actually going to come back here. He looks that move down it towards Grand Hill Bend. Does he do it on this lap? He does. On the inside, Scott Halliday takes the race lead, runs it wide, and between the race leaders, and then coming into play here. Tripping up the back here, and that will be advantageous for the 2 guys behind him. That's number 88 of Scott Halliday and the 34 of Don Gilbert. So Lee Healy just giving a little bit of breathing room. Brown clearways, and we are now starting this penultimate lap. So just 2.5 miles remaining in the MRO Powerbikes race on the weekend, and it's Lee Healy with the advantage, but we have gone into the 47. A few laps ago, there was a potential for a high 47, and it's a 47.95 for Scott Halliday at the end of the lap 13. And down towards Grand Hill Bend again. And here that's 2 miles left of racing, and there is potential to have not one but 2 to play here. They've just found their way through on the road. We're holding 4th in the retros at this stage. Up towards Clearway yet again, and it is number 224 of Lee Healy. He has led this race from start to finish despite a momentary coming up the inside of Van Hill Bend, but it's getting back on the running into the power, and it comes from a long way back to fire up the inside of the Paddock Hill Bend. Scott Halliday takes the race lead at the start of this final lap here in the final Powerbike race. Still a little bit wide, Lee Healy, that's in the inside line. Scott takes a late break there. Through good, but down for good. This was certainly the first thing Lee Healy will challenge here, and Scott needs to do exactly what he did for him yesterday. Hard that Honda, exactly where he did it once again. Dark Horse is different to the Scott Gilbert, and Lee Healy looks to the outside. No way through there, not against the likes of Scott Halliday, the reigning champion of France. Trying to go that right hand, and just one more corner to go. Clearway on towards Clark Herman, and it looks as though this could well be Scott Halliday's race here. Round Clark Herman on to the start of the third. Halliday in the MRO Powerbikes ahead of Lee Healy, and Don Gilbert yet again rounding out the podium on that number 34 Suzuki. The top 3 covered by 0.568 of a second. Fastest lap of the race was on lap 13 by Scott Halliday of a 47.958. But interestingly enough, Lee Healy at 48.082 at the end of the penultimate lap. Lap 12, sorry, that was. Don Gilbert at 48.045. So we're going to take the pace of all these great guys, and after lots of racing, that's around about 20 miles here of the Grand Vic circuit. It all comes down to half a second between our podium finishers. Craig Kennelly, who is 22nd adrift at the end, but 3.7 seconds up the road from Tommy Jones, so it's good, solid 4th place. 4th place with their 3rd 4th place finish of the weekend. Tommy Jones rounding out the overall top 5 with 25 points in the Clubman's. Yet again, he took the victory earlier on today, took a 2nd position in yesterday's race, which will mean that Tommy Jones will be the championship leader in the Clubman 1000, coming away from the opening